President, defendant, counsel, assistant attorney, jury room. Mr. Adelstein, I understand you went over the photographs for the next witness, is that right?
Yes, I did, and I put a tab, but not numbered. I put a tab on the ones that I object to. And I also would renew my objection on this witness, since there's been no legal ID on the other victim.
I don't know what the evidence is yet regarding that, and I understand your objection. Yes, sir. But the witness here will have the witness testify. Regarding these pictures, I take it you are Dr. Saunders, is it?
Sauder.
Sauder. Well, I don't think I've mentioned before, but these are certain photographs that the state intends to use. Some of them objected to by the defense. And I guess what I'm trying to ascertain from these photographs is which ones that you need to basically explain your testimony. And if there's photos that are duplicates in there, if you don't need both photos, you know, we'd like to get rid of the duplicates if you can, and we'd like to use the least gruesome photographs and basically go from there. So the first tab on it, because I'd like to talk about the ones that are objected to.
So that's where it's seen was that the students are ones that they are objecting to.
Okay. So what is that a photograph of?
It's a photo of the body bag that with a seal to make sure that it hasn't been tampered since the body was bagged at the hospital.
I didn't object to that.
It's got a tab on it.
Oh, I did? Okay. I withdraw that objection on that.
This one is a photo of his hand, and it shows the wound on the lateral aspect of his thumb.
I think there's another photograph of that.
Correct.
It's a duplicate?
It's a different angle.
Right. But both those photographs reflect an injury to a single injury to a hand, correct?
Correct. I can use the one that's not objected to. It's not
Which of these two, which one's that?
the one with the better lighting.
Okay. And get rid of him being duplicitous?
Yes.
So we're trying to just make sure we're not duplicating it, but the photograph that I see that you're holding up shows an injury and a wound to the thumb. And but it's not, I mean, there's a wound there, I don't know how you describe it, but it's not a gruesome photograph or anything like that. It's not, this is an external photograph.
Correct.
I mean,
And so for the record, it's clear this was also post-cleaning of the body.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Do you want to come up here so you can see?
post-cleaning of the body is what she said.
Okay.
So the objection note is overruled. I'll allow one of the photographs in.
This is a photo, that's not it. This one is showing the abrasions, which are wounds to the lower lip.
And there's any duplicates of that?
No.
And what's the objection?
It has nothing to do with the homicide.
He's got abrasions.
He has abrasions.
That's why the abrasions are...
The point on it is to document all the injuries during the autopsy, so...
Okay, objection notice overruled. It's not a gruesome photograph, not...
And then this is a photograph of the previous hand wound, but with the label that goes with the report.
Do you need both of them?
No.
So would it be better to use the one with the label on it?
Correct.
We're going to substitute one for the other, and previous picture is already deleted. Or removed from the package. There it is.
Sure, it's the same one. Yeah, it's the same one.
one in the series is objected to, and
Here's a
duplicate.
There's two that are marked injury L on the photograph.
Dr. Shire, before you go any further, on the first photo, what is this showing?
This is showing the location further away from the body, and this is just a close-up image.
And why do you do both?
This shows the skin tags. That gives you the idea of what direction that graze wound is from.
And the other one is for,
This one is just to show the relation of where it is, but you can't see the skin tags as close.
so it's orientation as to where it is on the body.
Correct.
And the objection is it's duplicate?
Yes.
All right, the objection notice overruled. This is not a gruesome photograph. It's
Those
the
are,
next one is objected to. And
they have photographs of injury labeled NOPQR in the other stack. That,
so this is a picture of all the injuries at the same place.
This is an orientation picture to show where they are in the back, and these are close-ups of the same injuries.
Thank you. The objection, again, the photograph's not gruesome. I mean,
but it's a duplicate here.
it's a duplicate, but it doesn't, shows where it is in relation to all the other injuries, and there's no duplicate of that picture, I take it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
All right, so I'll allow it. Objection notice overruled.
This is a photo to show where in location on the body the projectile was recovered.
Is
That's,
that to illustrate or explain your testimony?
Yes.
All right, is that the only one of the?
Of this gunshot wound, yes.
Yes,
it's with the skin pulled back.
correct.
Correct.
It's gruesome and I object to it.
I don't disagree that it has some, might be labeled as gruesome and concerning, that it shows the injury is the only one of its kind, as I am told. Is that correct, doctor? That's the only one you're displaying?
Yes.
Objection notice overruled.
This photograph is another depiction of a recovery of where the projectile was in location to the body.
And now, what is the difference between this picture and the one that was just last objected to?
This is a different projectile.
Different projectile, different injury.
Correct.
And how many photographs of this particular injury are in the packet?
This is the only one. I believe, yes.
So the objection is same?
Yeah, gruesome and it's the interior part of the body with the skin pulled back.
It is to both of those counts, but it's the only picture of that injury. And it's going to assist in explaining her testimony of what the doctor had indicated. Objection notice overruled.
Yes, sir.
And so the close-up of that one will take it. Yeah. That's the projectile.
This is a projectile labeled in the envelope. This is a different injury, different projectile, and where it's located in the body.
Same objection.
And I understand the objection. Objection's overruled. It's a different injury, different projectiles, what I'm being told, and that's the only picture of this injury. Is that correct?
Correct. This is a picture of when we opened the body after the projectiles have been removed.
And basically,
What's the-
the other injuries.
And what's the purpose of having this?
It's part of the standard procedure of autopsy. I can testify without this one.
You testify without it, so it'll be deleted.
Thank you.
This one is showing a different projectile and where it's recovered in the body.
So it's a different injury, different projectile.
Correct.
Same objection. It's the interior part of the body with the skin pulled back, correct? Very
Yes.
gruesome.
It is.
And so the court knows. In this case, as in the other autopsy, the fatal wound was the first wound to the neck or head area, correct? Or no?
All gunshot wounds are fatal.
And you're going to testify that that is a fatal shot?
All gunshot wounds are fatal.
That's number.
So we're not
Yeah,
doing
I
an examination now. The question is, this is a different injury,
This is a different injury, different projectile, in a different location.
your objection noted, and again, I understand it, what you state accurately depicts the picture. There is some gruesomeness to it. It's an internal picture, but I'll allow the only picture of this particular injury.
Sir.
This is a picture of where this particular projectile was located. It's inside the body cavity.
And why do you need this picture?
This is just to show where I recovered the projectile, that it wasn't moved or it wasn't handled. It's just where I found it during autopsy.
And this is from one of the previous wounds that you had, where it's located?
This is labeled in my autopsy report where I retrieved it from. And it's one that's labeled right lower chest.
And why, you're just, all you need this for is to show the jury where the projectile was located?
Correct.
And what's the significance of it?
Just to show, I have to document where I recover all my projectiles from.
It's a different projectile than we previously shown.
Correct.
But you can testify to that without the picture, that it was located at a certain location in the interior of the body, correct, Doctor?
Yes.
Same objection.
Yeah, so why don't we do that? This is a particularly gruesome photograph. I don't know that it has any independent significance to illustrate your testimony. It was just found in a different location. So I'm more than happy to revisit it if it becomes an issue, but at this time, let's just take it out.
Okay.
This is a picture showing where the projectile went through in the liver.
And this is one of the projectiles that you previously discussed.
Yes.
And so this is
This is to show the trajectory.
thank you. And your objection is?
Same objection.
Objection notice overruled. How about this? So gruesome that would influence the jury.
And this is a picture showing two different trajectories of where two different projectiles went through the heart.
And these, again, for prior injuries that were depicted in other pictures, this is where they went through parts of the body.
Internal, yes.
Same objection?
Yes, sir.
It's overruled.
This is a picture of the brain showing the injuries that the projectile from the face and what it did to the brain.
And why is that significant?
Because the trajectory of where it hit in the brain was incapacitating.
And
Dr. Sauder did also show hemorrhage on the brain and on that wound.
Correct.
Is that then to be compared and contrasted with the other wounds that do not show hemorrhage?
Yes.
And that's the first shot, correct?
Yes.
I would renew my objection. As the doctor said, that's the fatal shot. And all of
I
this
said it
is...
was the first shot.
thank you. In any event, I understand your objection.
Yes, sir.
You have opportunity for cross-examination. This is just this introduction of pictures, but you're telling me you need this to explain or illustrate your testimony, correct?
Correct.
All right, your objection note is overruled.
So there's two photos here. If you pick one.
I can pick, this is just showing where the projectile is located, the one from the head. This is the base of the skull. This is showing where it's located. This is the same picture, except the drawer matter has been removed, and then I put a probe in to show where I located it inside the base of the skull.
So regarding those two pictures and the previous one that I indicated I'd allow in of the, is that depict the same injury? If you go on a couple, the last one of the frame.
So in relation to this picture, it would have been located somewhere over here.
Okay, so why do you need all three of them?
I can testify without it.
So if you would pick one as to the best one to
Excuse
describe
me,
the
she said
injuries
she could
with the
testify
baby.
without it.
Doctor, I didn't understand that. When you say you can testify without, is that without two of the three or with the?
I can testify with this one, but then I would like to show this one to show where I retrieved the projectile, just like in the other ones inside the body.
And why is that important to show where the projectile is located?
To show that it didn't exit.
All right. Anything else? Judge,
Same objection.
it's over. All right. Take that one out. Those are all the photographs. So how many photographs are left now?
Once again, Your Honor. We started at 212, so then we were down to 57. So there should be 50 now.
How many?
50.
50?
50. Yep.
I voiced my objection. I understand the court's ruling. I would also voice my objection to the testifying since there's been no legal ID, and if the court allows me, to have a standing objection so I don't interrupt the witness, that's fine with me.
Standing objection is standing objection as to, I guess, the gruesomeness of the photos as well as the ID of the victim. And so you have a standing objection as to both of those. Regarding the gruesomeness of the pictures, there are some photographs in there, that are gruesome, but I don't think it's so inflammatory as to prejudice the jury.
I understand, and I would cite to the court the case that the state gave me, which is a 4th DCA case of Williams v. State, 70 Southern 3rd 726. That says they might be prohibitive, but the gruesomeness of the photographs are so prejudicial that they should not be admitted in evidence.
Thank you. Your objection noted. All right, ready to proceed?
Yes, sir. We're just making sure that the digital versions comply with Your Honor's ruling. Stand for Your Honor.
That's right. Mr. Adrienne, you're all set?
I need to ask them one question. Did you put in any other pictures?
What?
Did you put in any other pictures that were shown?
It's 50. We got 7.
Right.
Right. See the jury's ready?
Are you going to number them on the list like you did the other ones?
I can.
Well,
We don't know which ones.
No, I understand that.
All right, bring him in.
Jury entering.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Please be seated. Let the record once again reflect the presence of the defendant, Mr. Demons, his counsel, the assistant state attorneys, as well as the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, when we broke, the state was going to call our next witness. I take it this is your next witness, correct?
Yes, Dr. Adrienne Sauder.
Madam, could you please stand, raise your right hand and be sworn?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your full legal name for the record.
Adrienne Sauder.
Please spell your first and last name for the record.
Adrienne. Sauder. Sauder.
Thank you.
Please be seated. Doctor, that microphone in front of you will move up or down, right? But the judge does not adjust back and forth.
Okay.
You all set?
Yes.
Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Sauder. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Very well. Could you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury and tell them where you work?
I am an associate medical examiner at the Fort Pierce Medical Examiner's Office.
How long have you been an associate medical examiner there?
Since July 1st, 2019.
And in terms of prior to moving up to that office, where did you work?
I was a fellow at the Broward Medical Examiner's Office.
Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what types of training and education you had to become an associate medical examiner?
So I had to do a 4 years bachelor's, and I did that in liberal arts, which is philosophy, literature, and theology. I then did my pre-medical requirements at Creighton University in Nebraska and at the Pontifical Catholic University of Puerto Rico. I did a 2 years master's at the Ponce School of Medicine in Ponce, Puerto Rico. I then went to Mexico to the Autonomous University of Guadalajara to do med school. I then accepted a 4-year residency at Rutgers in Newark, New Jersey, and then I came down to Florida to do my 1-year fellowship training.
So in terms of your 4-year fellowship at Rutgers, what did that entail?
The 4-year residency is for general pathology.
And in terms of at what point did you decide you were going to become a medical examiner?
Before I went to med school.
When you are in medical school, do you obtain and become a doctor?
Yes.
Okay. And when you're as the pathology residency, what for those 4 years are you focusing on in most of your education and training at that point?
It's the study of disease and what's normal within the body.
And in terms of the number of autopsies that you do during your pathology 4-year residency, how many autopsies do you have performed?
In my residency, you have a requirement to do 50 autopsies.
Then would you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what is the fellowship part?
The fellowship part is a subspecialty in pathology, and it deals with forensics, which is the study of how trauma affects the body, and your main job is determine cause and manner of death.
Okay, and so Dr. Sauder, how long were you a fellow with the Broward County Medical Examiner's Office?
I started there on July 1st, 2018, and I finished June 30th, 2019.
From July 1st to 2018 through the end of June 2019, how many autopsies were you involved?
Approximately 200.
In your total careers as a forensic pathologist, approximately how many autopsies have you done?
Approximately 1,200.
For coming into court, have you had the opportunity to come to court before and testify as an expert in the area of forensic pathology?
Yes,
And how many times is that?
this would be my 5th time.
The training and education that you have in terms of the medical school components, is that similar to any medical school in the United States?
Yes, so after I completed my years in Mexico, I did a pre-internship year at New York Medical College, which is in Valhalla, New York.
And what did you do during that pre-internship?
I rotated through the different specialties in medicine, including internal medicine, psychiatry, OBGYN, and family medicine, pediatrics.
And in terms of determining cause and manner of death, is that something you do on a daily basis?
Yes.
What percentage of your daily work tasks involve performing autopsies?
I would say every day I have an autopsy, I determine cause and manner.
Okay. Here at this time, state with tender to counsel. Dr. Paul Dyer, on your area of expertise in forensic pathology.
No question. Thank you. Proceed, counsel.
So we just heard from Dr. McDougall, so I'm not going to ask you to reiterate all the questions about the types of cause and manner on that. I'd like to go straight into the case that you are here on today. Doctor, did you have an opportunity to perform an autopsy under Broward Medical Examiner's case number 18-3119?
Yes.
And in terms of how did you get assigned to that particular case?
The pathologist who was assigned to do autopsies that day gave me the task of doing that autopsy.
And when that autopsy was presented to you, were there a series of photographs that were taken?
Yes,
Would those photographs assist in educating the jury and explaining your testimony?
absolutely.
Here at this time, the state is approaching with what's been previously shown to defense counsel and labeled as state's AAAA for identification purposes. Dr. Sauder, do you recognize those photographs?
Yes,
Did you have the opportunity to review them prior to coming into court today?
yes, I did.
Do they fairly and accurately depict the autopsy that was done under Broward Medical Examiner's case number 18-3119?
Yes,
Do they fairly and accurately depict the state and condition of the body as you found it?
yes,
Here at this time, the state would request to move the state's AAAA in as state 74-5.
Is there any objection?
Same objection as
Was
previously made.
Was overruled. Will be admitted.
States quadruple A, landmark states 75. And it's a composite of 50 photos.
50 photos and 1 USB. Okay, so Dr. Sauder, I'm going to start with the photos and go in order. The Broward County Medical Examiner's Office, do they have an X-ray machine?
they have a full-body x-ray machine called Lodos.
And what does that help you in this particular case with showing and illustrating?
It shows us if there's any retained projectiles in the body.
Showing you in photograph number 1, are there projectiles that were retained in the body of this individual?
Yes,
In terms of, can you point them out? And the screen in front of you is a touch screen, but it will not make any marks. And if you need me to move any of the image, please let me know.
so you see one in the head, right there. You see one in the chest here, 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 here. You see a fragment here, another projectile here. And if you move down, there's a, nope, too far. There's a minute fragment right there.
Okay. So going on to the next photo, number 2, what view are we looking at in this image?
This is a lateral view, and it helps us pinpoint where exactly within the body cavities they are located.
Okay, and if you could show again to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury where the projectiles are found on the lateral view.
So the one in the back of the head, right here near the axilla, here, 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 and I believe there's one in, no. That's it.
Okay. Going on to the third photo, what are we looking at here?
This is a photo of the sealed body bag. So every autopsy bag gets sealed with a number. We then cut that seal and document the time it's cut so that it preserves the evidence within the body bag and makes sure there's been no tampering.
Was this body bag received with the seal intact to your office?
Yes. It also depicts the autopsy case number with the ruler.
And in terms of the autopsy case number, if you could read that for the record, please.
A18-3119.
Going on to the next photograph, what are we looking at here?
This is a clean headshot of our Mr. Christopher Thomas.
Okay. When you say clean, what does that mean?
This means that after we have documented opening the body bag, we take a series of photos that depict how the body is received, and they may be covered in blood. So after we clean the decedent, then we start documenting the photograph, start documenting injuries after they've been cleaned.
Okay. Going on to the next photograph in this series, what are we looking at in this image?
You're looking at one of the hands.
And is that now the same view of the right hand?
Correct.
And what are you showing here on the right hand?
I'm showing that there is no injuries to this hand.
Okay. What are we looking at in this next photo?
The hand,
Okay.
the palmar surface.
Okay. Moving on to the left hand in this next image. Could you show to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the injury on this particular photo?
So you see an injury to the lateral aspect of the thumb, right here.
When you say lateral, what does that mean?
That means on the side.
Thank you. Okay, going on to the next image.
Here you see another injury on the palmar surface of the hand.
Okay. What are we looking at here in this photograph?
You're seeing a series of abrasions, which means scrapes to the upper and lower lips, right here.
In terms of
here.
the purpose of an autopsy, what are you trying to do?
We're trying to document the injuries we find on a body.
Are you able to place a time and date stamp to the second of when these injuries occurred?
No.
In terms of the images and the abrasions that are viewed here on the lower lip that you just pointed out, can you characterize if they are healing, if there are new, fresh, anything like that?
These look like they're new.
And what would you be able to say to base that opinion?
Because there's hemorrhage on them.
And hemorrhage is what?
Blood.
Going to the next photo here, what are we looking at?
This is a close-up image of the wound to the left cheek.
And the dark circle around it, what is that?
That's what we call an abrasion margin, and that abrasion margin has been dried, so it looks dark. You also see areas of little dots of abrasions right here, 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 all over, and that's called stippling.
Okay, I think we have another picture we'll get to in a moment on that one. Going to what you have labeled as wound B. What is wound B depicted?
This is a defect to the thumb.
Can you tell on wound B if it is an entrance or an exit?
No, I cannot.
Why not?
Because I was informed.
Objection.
Hearsay.
Can I see several?
Sauder, based on your education, training, and experience, why is it difficult to determine an entrance or exit wound on a hand?
Because it fractures bone, and when bone is fractured, it can cause an exit or entrance injury. So it can deform the defect, and it would be hard to tell which one is entrance and which one is exit.
So in terms of on this particular wound, B, can you say if it is an entrance or an exit?
No.
Okay, going on to wound A. What does wound A show in this photo?
It shows the stippling and the defect to the left cheek.
And in terms of what is the wound path of wound A?
Sorry.
What is the wound path that was caused as a result of this gunshot wound?
So it's going from left to right, front to back, and upwards.
Okay. And in turn, on this photo, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Can you show some of the ladies and gentlemen, either with the red stick next to you or using the mouse, the different areas of stippling?
Stippling is all these little pinpoint abrasions you see around the wound, even up here, 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 and there.
And so, Dr. Sauder, in terms of the range on a wound with this type of stippling, do you have an opinion as to the distance or range that the firearm would have been?
I can give a range based on a textbook answer, because to get the specific range you need the type of gun and the same type of ammunition that was used to cause this wound.
So based on your...
Checked on hearsay.
An expert needs a learned treatise.
Excuse me?
An expert can rely upon a learned treatise.
I don't want to discuss things in open court. Just come silent.
Okay, Dr. Sauder, in terms of the exact distance that a firearm was from a entrance wound, can you do that without having the actual firearm?
No.
What types of distance determination can you make based on the pattern of stippling that you see here?
That it's anywhere from 3 to 18 and up to 36 inches.
So 3 to 36 inches.
Correct.
So in terms of the injuries that are associated with this wound track, what would they include?
So the injuries start with fractures to the zygomatic bone, which is your cheekbone. It then injures and perforates the dura, which is the covering of the brain. It then caused a subarachnoid hemorrhage, and it caused lacerations to the cerebellum, which is in charge of your posture and coordination. It also caused injuries to the midbrain, to the pons, and the medulla. And those parts of your brain are in charge of your circulation, your heart beating, and your breathing.
Okay. Did it also have an impact in the right occipital bone?
Yes.
Where is that?
The right occipital bone is the posterior part of the cranial fossa. So the latter part of when you open a brain, it has 3 different compartments, and it's on the back of the right side of that compartment.
Dr. Sauder, would a demonstrative help in illustrating the approximate locations of wound A and the wound track?
Yes.
Showing defense counsel what's been labeled as ENEO 18-3119. So.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, the witness is going to be using a demonstrative to assist in explaining or illustrating her testimony. Remember that the testimony of the witness is the evidence. The demonstrative is not in evidence, and it's not to be considered as evidence. And unless it's later received in evidence, it does not go back to the jury room with you during deliberations.
So, Dr. Sauder, on the styrofoam replica head that you have in front of you, can you show the mark that you placed on that that would be equivalent to the mark A on Christopher Thomas's face?
So the entrance wound would be approximately right here on the cheek.
And in terms of where the occipital bone, where you said that the impact or the terminal location of the bullet was, where would that be on that?
So in order to accurately depict that, you would have to open the brain, and if I don't do that, then approximately right here, but on the inside.
And so if you could just turn around and show that to ladies and gentlemen of the jury and point at it. Okay. Moving on to the next photo, C. Does C line up with B? Is that the other side of the hand?
Yes.
Can you tell if this is an entrance or an exit wound?
No.
Same reasons as for B?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of wound D, what are we looking at here?
D is a defect to the D is the entrance wound to the medial lateral aspect. Medial dorsal aspect of the left foot.
And if you could explain what dorsal means.
Posterior.
Okay. And how can you tell that D is an entrance wound?
Because of the characteristics of the wound and because it has an abrasion margin.
In terms of the order in which you label from A to D, are you suggesting in any way that that's the order the wounds were inflicted?
No.
How do you pick what letter is assigned to which wound?
So I try to go from head to toe when the decedent is on their back, and then I try to continue labeling them when we turn them over and go head to toe.
Okay. So going on to wound E, what is that?
That is the exit wound on the foot and the exit wound.
And that matches or coincides with the same wound track as in wound D?
Yes.
On to wound F. What does that show?
F is an exit wound.
And how can you tell that F is an exit wound?
Because of the laceration.
And what is a laceration?
It is a cut.
Moving on to G. What wound does this depict?
G shows the entrance wound of the right arm.
In terms of G, is there any hemorrhage associated with this wound?
No.
What does that tell you as a forensic pathologist when you're looking at wound G?
That the heart was not beating at the time that this wound was inflicted.
Okay. Going on to H. What does that wound show?
H is a exit wound, and it shows that there's very little hemorrhage associated with that wound.
And now looking at I. What is that showing?
That's showing an entrance wound, and if you look close, you can see an area with black fibers that I collected and submitted as evidence. And it also shows an abrasion ring or collar, an abrasion around the wound with very little hemorrhage.
And again, what does that tell you as a forensic pathologist?
That the heart was not beating at the time that it was inflicted.
Okay, and so we're clear for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, H and I are on the same wound track.
Correct.
Going on to J. Does that show in this next photo?
J shows the exit wound by the axilla.
And J corresponds with wound G.
Correct.
That's the same wound track.
G is the entrance and J is the exit.
And in terms of on wound J, do you see signs of hemorrhage?
No.
Moving on to wound K, what does that show?
That shows an entrance wound to the right axilla.
And can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this penetrating or perforating?
This is penetrating.
And what does that mean?
That means that there is an entrance but not an exit.
Do J and K line up when the arm is in a downward position?
Yes, they could.
Moving on to wound L, what is depicted in this wound?
That shows a graze wound.
What is a graze wound?
That's a superficial wound that only injures the skin, and it's caused by a projectile.
And in terms of, can you tell any sort of directionality on this graze wound?
It goes from back to front based on the skin tags you see right here.
And what are the skin tags?
Those are just defects, and they point towards where the projectile went.
Okay. Would wound L have been fatal by itself?
No.
Going on to wound M, what are we looking at here?
This is a entrance wound to the thigh.
And were you able to determine if there is a corresponding exit wound?
Not at the time of the autopsy.
After the autopsy was completed, I'm showing you it's been already entered into evidence as states 8. Was this photo forwarded to your attention?
Yes.
And the unlabeled wound in states 8, what does that show?
That shows an exit wound.
And does that unlabeled exit wound, would that match up with the wound track of wound M?
Yes.
Okay, and so it's clear we're going to publish states 8. And for states 8, were you able to zoom in and read the name on the hospital band?
Yes, it says Christopher Thomas.
Were those hospital photos available to you at the time of autopsy?
No.
Okay, back to, so we discussed M. Going on to the photo that we are looking at here, what is this depicting?
That shows a series of entrance wounds to the back and to the right arm.
In terms of the height and weight of the decedent, do you document that?
Yes.
And what was the height and weight of Mr. Thomas?
His height was 69 inches and his weight was 145 pounds.
And can you translate that into feet and inches?
I believe that's 5'9".
5 times 12 is 60 plus 9? Is that the math you just did in your head?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not the best at math.
So going on to what's been labeled as wound N. Where is that located on the body?
N is located on the left side of the back.
Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go forward to and kind of work backwards on these.
Okay.
So starting with this overall shot, Dr. Sauder, if you could explain the orientation on this shot, where the head is, where the feet are.
So the ruler points towards where the head is. So, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The head is above the letters and the feet are below the letters.
Okay. So as it is currently situated on the screen, where would the decedent or victim's head be?
Above N, O, P, Q, and R.
Okay. So to work backwards as to wound R. Where is this wound?
That wound is on the right side of the back.
And is this a penetrating or perforating wound?
It's a penetrating wound.
And so to remind the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if it is penetrating, are you able to recover a projectile?
Yes.
So as to wound R, do you see evidence of hemorrhage?
The abrasion margin has no hemorrhage.
Okay. There's blood inside the center of that defect. Why?
Because when the blood vessels get ruptured, they will release whatever blood is inside them.
Does gravity still apply?
Yes.
So going backwards to wound Q. Was there any sign of hemorrhage on this wound?
There is no hemorrhage on the abrasion.
What does that tell you from both R and Q?
That the heart was not beating at the time these wounds were inflicted.
Going to wound P. Where is that wound?
P is located on the right side of the back.
And can you make any comments about the abrasion and the hemorrhage on wound P?
There is also a lack of hemorrhage on this wound.
Going back to O. What can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about O?
O is on the left side of the back, and there is very little hemorrhage around the abrasion margin.
Okay. And back to N. What can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about N?
N is on the left side of the back, and I also recovered some black fibers from it, and I submitted it as evidence.
Okay. And could you point to the fibers you're talking about?
Here, here,
Okay.
and here.
Okay, moving on to wound S. Where is wound S?
S is another graze wound, and that is located on the right buttock.
And can you determine a directionality from wound S?
No,
Why not?
because I could not see any skin tags left by the projectile.
Going on to the next photo here. What are we looking at this metal object there?
That is one of the recovered projectiles.
Okay. Did you collect that and label it?
Yes,
Was that submitted into evidence?
yes.
Moving on to the next projectile, where did you recover it from?
The right upper quadrant of the abdomen.
Is that the picture that we're looking at here on this one?
No.
Okay. So that other, to go back to the right upper quadrant of the abdomen, where was that found?
That corresponds to wound R.
So in
Sorry.
Sure.
Dr. Sauder, if you need to refresh your recollection at any point, let me know. Have you memorized every single projectile and every single wound track they go through?
No.
Okay. With regards to going back, I'm going to go back to just the photo of the projectile on the one that's from the right chest. What wound half did that equate with? And if you need to look at your report, please let me know.
Can I look at my report, please?
Please.
The projectile that corresponds to the right chest is the projectile from wound P.
Objection.
There's an objection pending, counsel objects to reading from the report. So just read it to yourself, and then when you're done, you put your note down, and just you can indicate if your memory's refreshing and then answer the question, all right?
Okay.
So Dr. Sauder, after reviewing the report, Are you able to tell the right chest which wound peak that came from?
From the entry of wound P.
So now going on to the right upper quadrant of the abdomen that's labeled as projectile 2. Do you recall where that particular projectile was recovered from?
I need to look at my report.
Please, if you would, refresh your recollection, look up once you are done.
That corresponds to the entry of labeled R.
Off. So moving on, so in this particular photo here, what are we looking at?
That is one of the other projectiles that I recovered.
Okay. Is that next photo that we were looking at projectile 3 from the left chest?
Yes.
Do you recall which projectile 3, which wound track it came from?
I would have to look at my report.
Please refresh your recollection if you need to. And once you're done, look up.
That corresponds to the entrance wound O.
Okay. Going on to the picture and next photo that we are looking at, does this depict?
That is another projectile that I recovered from the axilla.
And what is the axilla?
That is the area near your armpit.
Okay. And is that the next photo, projectile number 4?
Yes.
And do you recall which wound path letter that corresponds to?
I would have to look at my report again.
If you need to refresh your recollection, please feel free to do so.
That corresponds to the entrance labeled N.
N is in Nancy?
Correct.
Okay. So moving on to the next projectile number 5 from that says left axilla.
Yes.
And so which wound track was this particular projectile recovered from?
I would have to look at my report again.
If you need to refresh your recollection, please feel free to do so.
That corresponds to the entrance wound labeled K.
Going on to the next projectile number 6. The right lower chest on that. So before we get to that, I noticed on the envelopes that we're looking at, it says pathologist Rebecca McDougall. That's not you.
Yes.
Why does it say her name on there?
Because she was supervising me during the autopsy.
Okay, so going on to projectile number 5, right lower chest. Where was this projectile recovered from?
May I look at my report, please?
Please go to refresh your recollection. Whenever you're ready.
The entrance letter corresponds to Q.
Okay. Going on to the next photo, what are we looking at here?
You are looking at the liver with a rod to show that there are defects to the liver.
And the defects that are shown, what are they?
They correspond to the trajectory of one of the gunshot wounds.
And in terms of normal anatomical position, where is the liver found?
That is found on your right side of your abdomen.
Going on to the next photo here, Turn that one. What are we looking at in this photo?
That is a photograph depicting the heart, and the rods are showing 2 defects to the heart.
And in terms of the hemorrhage on the heart, is that shown in this photo?
The hemorrhage is from the blood that was in the pericardium, which is the sac that contains the heart.
In terms of the, do you have an opinion as to whether or not the heart was beating when those projectiles made the defects to it?
No.
No, it wasn't beating, or no, you don't have an opinion?
No, it wasn't beating.
Okay. Going on to the foreign material. Are these the items you pointed out previously?
Yes.
Okay. What are we looking at in this photo? Hold on, let me turn it for the... If you could explain what this is?
This is showing the brain and the extensive subarachnoid hemorrhage it has, and the lacerations that you can see to the right side of the cerebellum, which controls your balance, and also to the pons and the medulla and the midbrain.
So in terms of the where we're looking right now, can you give me an orientation? Is this top, bottom?
This is the bottom side of the brain.
Okay. And for the head that you have in front of you, the styrofoam, could you show where on that how that would be oriented and put in the same position?
So you would have to, so it's upside down and turned around.
Okay.
So if you were to cut this open and hollow it out, you would just literally flip it back in like that.
Okay. So what are we looking at in this photo here?
That is the base of the skull.
And what has been done to get access to this part of the skull?
So I inserted a rod to show that the trajectory from the injury from the left cheek went all the way through and crossed into the right side of the cranial occipital bone.
And in terms of, is there evidence of hemorrhage along this wound tract?
Yes.
Would you have an opinion as to if the individual was alive or the heart was beating when this wound was inflicted?
Yes.
And what would that be?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
What would your opinion be?
So my opinion is that at the time that this gunshot wound was inflicted, because of all the hemorrhage to the base of the brain, that this individual was alive.
Okay. Going on to projectile number 7. Where was this projectile recovered from?
On the right occipital bone.
Same from the picture we just looked at?
Correct.
Okay. Going on to these fragments here. Where were these recovered from?
Can I look at my report again, please?
If you need to, please.
These fragments were collected with wound that with the entrance wound from lettered R.
R. Okay. So I want to go back for just a moment to what is under image DSC_5507, and that particular set of wounds. Dr. Sauder, after you completed the autopsy in this case, did you go and see the vehicle in which the decedent was riding?
I went to see the vehicle after this autopsy was signed out, yes.
Why did you do that?
Because it was a teaching opportunity.
And when you say a teaching opportunity, did you view the trajectory rods that were placed in the back of the seat?
Yes.
I'm going to put them side by side so you can explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Were you able to correlate the wounds in through R with the trajectory rods in the back of the seat?
Objection. Non-direct.
Much come cycle.
Why is that important to do?
To see if we can gather more information regarding our lateral and independent investigation.
Is that important for positioning of a body?
Objection leading.
Why is that important?
Because we would like to see in what position the body was at the time of death.
And in terms of, based on your scene visit in this case, are you able to determine what position the body was in?
Same objection.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I need a few minutes with the attorneys. Just leave down your notepads, please. Don't discuss the case. Don't form any opinion about the case. Don't allow anyone to discuss the case. All right? No research. Thank you. Let the record reflect the jury stepped down. Counselor Manuel with defendant. So I sustain the objection initially in sidebar. I don't know what we've done to be able to establish her expertise. I don't know if this is something she's done in the past. Is it something that she's taught in school or something along those lines? But I need more of a background to show qualifications, Counselor.
Dr. Sauder, in terms of your forensic pathology experience, is it important to go to a scene?
I went to many scenes during my fellowship, yes.
And can you explain to the court why you need to go to the scene and see the surroundings a body was in when it was deceased?
So that I can see the position, if I can see if the autopsy findings correspond to my findings or the information I was given from the investigation, and things to that nature.
Based on the scene visit in this case, were you able to further your autopsy in your opinion as to what happened?
I had already established the cause and manner of death at the end of this autopsy, and this scene visit occurred months after I had finalized the case.
And in terms of the positioning of the body at the time that wounds N through R, are you able to render an opinion based on the defects in the car and the defects in the body?
Yes.
And what is that?
That the decedent was slouched over slightly, and they would match to the defects on his back.
And in terms of the opinion as to whether or not the decedent was alive at the time that wounds N through R are placed onto the body, does the scene visit help and assist you in an opinion on that?
Yes.
And how so?
So I can see that there was no hemorrhage on these wounds, and that I collected black foreign material from one of these wounds, and I submitted it as evidence.
Apparently that would be the proper testimony the state would be eliciting in front of the jury.
May I ask a question, sir?
Yes.
Have you ever been declared an expert in the trajectory of bullets?
No.
I object.
So, Counselor, did you take this witness's deposition?
Yes.
And was she tendered as an expert in any type of trajectory analysis?
No, she was not. Nor did we get notice. I'm sorry. Nor did we get any notice that she was. They do have an expert on trajectory that they listed 3 or 4 years later.
In any of the reports that you received, did you get any, contain any opinions by the doctor as to this type of testimony?
No, sir.
So, I guess I don't understand it. It's not something that's disclosed. It's done afterwards. After the autopsy was done, it doesn't concern the cause and manner of death. And there's I don't know how this is going to aid the jury, number one. And number two, it seems to me that if the expert's given an opinion, it should have been disclosed.
And Your Honor, this was disclosed. This was all provided to defense well in advance. All of this was done prior to the arrest of the defendant.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yes.
I thought Mr. Adelstein just told me it wasn't disclosed, he had no knowledge of it.
No, this is all predates the arrest of the defendant. They have copies of all of these images and photographs.
Instead of the images and photographs they may have copies of, but was it disclosed to Mr. Adelstein or any of the defense counsel that the doctor was going to render an opinion on trajectory analysis, or how did...
She's not rendering an opinion on trajectory analysis, Your Honor. She's rendering an opinion on the defects in the body, that they are consistent with, and the material is consistent with the vehicle, which is why she went out and looked at the vehicle. She's not giving a trajectory on that.
That's not totally correct. Dr. McDougall took her out to the scene because this is one of 3 cases in her entire experience that she could determine which injury occurred first, which was a fatal injury of both. And it was a learning experience for her because she was merely a fellow under the supervision of Dr. McDougall, with all due respect.
So I guess there's an objection to it, the testimony. And I guess my concern is twofold. Number one is that there's an objection based upon her background and expertise. Does it allow her to render an opinion as to this? That's part of it. And the other part is, to me, is Mr. Adelstein's telling me this is something new to him. He was not aware of it. So is there anything in the doctor's report, any of the reports that were tendered over to the defense counsel that suggests the doctor can render some type of opinion like this, that the location of the wounds on the victim's back are consistent with the way they went through the seat in the automobile?
Yes, Your Honor, this was disclosed to defense from day one. These particular images are actually listed right next to one another in the arrest warrant, indicating that the witnesses had testified and had provided this witness because she did the autopsy of Christopher Thomas, that was the individual who went out to the scene, and that she has testified and presented to this court that this helped in corroborating and explaining her testimony, and that the scene visit helped in explaining her testimony and showing that the individual was already deceased when those particular bullet wounds went in. If Your Honor will recall, the co-defendant's statement was played in which it was supposedly a drive-by gone bad. That's already been put before the jury. This is going to a matter that is at issue of showing that this drive-by was completely staged, that he was already dead at the point when those wounds were put in.
Then back to you, Mr. Adelstein. I'm sorry, I thought you indicated on multiple occasions you haven't received any notice of this, and counsel suggesting you have. So
We have not received any notice that she was going to testify to anything other than manner and cause of death, which she has done.
So show me where you notified them, defense, that she was testifying to something other than manner and cause of death.
In terms of her expertise in the cause and manner of death, Your Honor, with regards to that, the initial arrest warrant, like I said, has both of these pictures on it next to one another, showing that they line
Is it
up.
something that says the doctor's going to testify to that effect?
It's something that was told to law enforcement by the medical examiner staff.
Is that somewhere in your reports?
While they're looking for it, so the court knows, the trajectory expert was, we were put on notice approximately 3.5 to 4 years after this incident, after the autopsy, and after all of this.
So it's clear, she is not testifying on trajectory. She is testifying on the defects to the body, on that, and that the defects to the body are consistent with the defects to the back of the seat.
What does that have to do with manner and cause of death?
Showing that...
Listen, ma'am, I don't need any hand stick, all right? Purple shirt, I don't need anything, all right? You, yes, ma'am. I don't need you making hand gestures or anything, all right?
Showing that, in terms of when these wounds were inflicted, the individual was already dead. That was slumped over, and there was no hemorrhage and things like that. It's the same that we've been talking about for the last hour, and some at this point.
I guess it's coming down to me, is there anything in the autopsy report that suggests this testimony is forthcoming, or anything in her deposition that suggests this testimony is forthcoming?
I don't believe a copy of her deposition was ever ordered on that. And in terms of specifically in the deposition, counsel, in terms of, and I had notes to this effect, had discussions and asked questions about contact with Christopher Williams and his analysis that was done. He is the one that did the trajectory analysis on that, and they talked about the ballistic reports on that, and the date of her depo was February 24th of 2022. Also, talked about the scene visit and observing the vehicle with the rods inside the vehicle at that point. And then she testified in her depo that the pattern on the back matches the car.
So you're saying it's in the deposition?
It is.
Thank you. And your dispute that I take it with Tracy?
I don't have any recollection of that. And even if it was there, she's not an expert. And it was Dr. McDougall who took her out there to show her. This is a rare situation which I can determine what was the first shot, which was the fatal shot on both of the victims. That was it.
We all done?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Objection notice overruled. I'll let her testify. All right, can we bring the jury back up?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Please be seated. Let the record once again reflect the presence of the defendant, Demons, his counsel, the assistant state attorneys, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, and our witness, Dr. Sauder, remains on the stand. Counsel, please continue.
Okay, Dr. Sauder, we were talking about the viewing of these two photographs. The image on the left is what?
The image on the left are the entrance wounds to the back.
And the picture on the right, what does that depict?
Those are trajectory rods in the back seat of a car.
Did you place the trajectory rods in that car?
No.
Did you go out and visit that car after rods had been placed in it at a later date?
Yes.
Based on your training and education, can you make any opinion as to the defects that are on the body and the images and the rods in the car?
Objection.
Sustained.
So Dr. Sauder, in terms of the defects on the body, are they consistent with the defects in the car?
Objection.
Yes.
So in terms of the other evidence that you collected, you mentioned there was foreign material from the left side of the back and the torso.
Correct.
Prior to coming into court today, you had the opportunity to review the items of evidence and what's been marked as states quadruple C for identification purposes?
Yes.
And are they in the same or substantially same condition as when you recovered them?
Yes.
Here at this time, the state would request to move states quadruple C in as state 76.
Any objection?
States quadruple C.
Hold on.
No.
I didn't hear an objection.
No, sir.
No objection. They'll be admitted.
States quadruple C will be marked state 76.
Okay, Dr. Sauder, in terms of was toxicology done on Mr. Thomas?
Yes, there was.
And were you able to provided information as to what the results of that were?
Yes.
And what were the results of the toxicology for Mr. Thomas?
He had cannabinoids in his system, which is just another word for marijuana.
Can you tell in terms of time since ingestion?
No.
Can you tell the amount that was ingested?
No.
And did you come into an opinion as to the cause of death?
Yes.
And what was that?
Multiple gunshot wounds.
And what was the manner of death?
Homicide.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Ma'am?
Very close. Great. Go ahead.
Thank you. Doctor, at the time you performed the autopsy, I believe you were a fellow at the Broward Medical Examiner's office. Is that correct?
Yes.
That means you were working under the supervision of either the medical examiner or an associate medical examiner was reviewing your work, correct?
I was under the supervision of the associate or the chief.
Okay, and in this case it was Dr. McDougall, correct?
Correct.
Now, all of these injuries that you've described were either intermediate or indeterminate.
Correct.
That means that, well, first of all, do you know how many shooters were involved in this case?
No.
Do you know the weapon that was used in this case?
No.
You can't place the shooter or shooters when these injuries occurred, correct?
Correct.
You indicated that you did an external examination, and you said the individual was 5'7"?
I believe I said 5'9".
Excuse me, 5'9". And he weighed 145 pounds,
Correct.
and he had dreadlocks, correct?
Yes.
Now, did you cut his hair before you did the complete autopsy?
I did not cut his hair.
Okay. Do you know if anyone examined those dreadlocks to determine if there was any stippling, gunpowder, or anything
No.
on it? Did you examine his clothes?
He came unclothed to our office.
I believe Detective Moretti was present, wasn't he?
I don't remember if Detective Moretti was there. I know that Detective Tomlin was there because I handed him my chain of custody for the evidence.
Okay. And you know that Detective Moretti is the lead detective.
That's what I was told, yes.
You also know that it's important to examine the clothes of the decedent to determine possibly the range of the shooter or shooters, correct?
In the Broward County Medical Examiner's office, our decedents are usually received unclothed.
Okay. But you know from your experience that the clothes are an important factor in the investigation, correct?
Yes.
You also know that especially someone who has long hair, unfortunately I have no hair, But you know that someone who has long hair could give evidence as to the location of the shooter or shooters, distance-wise, because that collects stippling,
Objection,
gunpowder,
compound
etc.
question.
Sustain, rephrase, break it down.
I certainly will. You know that long hair can collect gunpowder residue.
Yes, that's possible.
And you know that this individual had long hair, in fact, dreadlocks, correct?
Correct.
Do you know if any detective or any crime scene investigator collected that evidence?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you know why?
Nope.
So you don't know the distance of the shooter or shooters, correct?
Correct.
You don't know the gun or guns that were used, correct?
Correct.
You don't know if the clothing was collected and examined,
That's not part of my job.
okay? And you don't know if the hair or the dreadlocks were examined by anybody from either the Miramar Police Department or the Broward Sheriff's Office, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you prepared a report, correct?
Yes.
That was in 2018 or 19, was it?
I believe
You can look at your report to get the date.
I completed and signed the report January 24th of 2019.
Now, you learned, did you not, approximately 3 years later, you had made a mistake in that report, correct?
Correct.
And you learned that and Dr. McDougall had to prepare another report for you.
She
Correct?
amended the report. That's-
Amended the report for you
Yes.
3 years later.
Yes, because I no longer worked there anymore.
And you're aware, are you not, in order to place the shooter or shooters when this individual received all those injuries, that you need the same gun, correct?
Yes.
You need the same ammunition, correct? You need to look at the clothes and the hair and the stippling or the gunshot residue.
Other people do that, yes.
Yes, but you know that's
Yes,
necessary.
that's trained.
Okay. And Dr. McDougall indicated that she took you out to look at the car as a learning experience.
Yes.
Was that correct?
Yes.
And that learning experience was because in all of her autopsies, which I think she said it were in the thousands, and at that time you had performed how many autopsies?
You would have to go back to the Broward County office and get those numbers.
But you were being supervised by Dr. McDougall.
Yes.
Okay. She took you out there as a learning experience because in all of her career, it's very unusual to determine what is shot, the first shot to an individual, versus the second, third, fourth, or fifth shot, correct?
Correct.
And she took you out there to show you that the first shot on the individual you did the autopsy was the fatal shot. To the head, I think you said. Or the neck. Cheek, excuse me. Was the fatal shot, correct?
Yes.
Which means that the person, when the other shots occurred, was dead, correct?
Can you repeat that again, please?
The first shot to the cheek was the fatal shot.
Yes.
That killed him, correct?
Yes.
The other shots that you described, and we saw photographs of, occurred after the death because there was no bleeding or hemorrhage, correct?
Correct.
And that was the reason why Dr. McDougall took you out there, because in her career it was so unusual to say, this is shot number one, the first shot that occurred, right?
Yes.
Can I have a moment?
Yes, sir.
Boss to say I'm finished.
Thank you, sir. Madam, do you have any redirect?
Yes, just briefly. On wound B, is there some evidence of hemorrhage on wound B?
No.
In terms of indeterminate range, what does that mean?
That means that I can't tell because there's the absence of a muzzle imprint or stippling.
And what does intermediate range mean?
That means that there is stippling around the wound.
And is there a range in which you would call a wound intermediate in distance?
Intermediate would be when I have stippling, and that can be anywhere from 3 to 36 inches.
No further questions, John.
One question.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any evidence to indicate this young man was involved in
Your
this?
Honor.
Abstain. This witness excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down. Excused. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take the adjourn for the evening. Keep your notepads on your chairs. We'll see everybody back tomorrow at 9. Remember the admonition, you are not to discuss the case. Don't form any opinion about the case. Don't allow anyone to discuss the case in your presence, certainly no research. Have a good night. See you tomorrow at 9. Thank you. And you let the record reflect the jury stepped out, counsel remain along with the defendant. Anything to discuss?
The temperature's workable now. It only took till 3:30, 4 o'clock, but I thank the court.
You
Other than
complain
that-
too much, Mr. Adelson.
I know.
We're going back and forth. But I gotta tell you, you're always right with the temperature. They can't get us straight. Madam State, who's your witness for tomorrow?
I'm going to double check and make sure that they're available on them. I believe it will be Christopher Williams.
And how long do you anticipate this testimony?
2 days.
All right, we'll see Mr. Williams tomorrow.
You plan to have
Anything to discuss, Ms. Bratton?
No, Your Honor.
Anything to discuss, counsel?
No, sir.
All right, see you all tomorrow.
Yes, sir.